Welcome back, everyone. Today we're making a crossbody bag. And this bag measures in at 9 by 7.5 with a 2.5 inch depth, making it the perfect size for all your daily essentials. And this design is on the easier side, so if you are new to sewing, you should have no problem following the easy step-by-step tutorial. With all that being said, don't forget to grab the PDF pattern and let's get started. Getting started, you'll need a 1/2 yard for your main fabric, and you can pretty much use any style of fabric for this project. I'm going to be using an upholstery fabric. I've been using these a lot. I just like how they look and they have a nice texture to them. If you do choose to go this route, just be aware they're a little bit inconsistent, so it may not always turn out correct. But like always, get creative with it and use a fabric that's really going to make your design come together. You'll need a 1/2 yard for your secondary fabric, and this is going to be for the lining on the inside of the bag. So I recommend using a lighter weight fabric. I'm going to be using a nylon. I found this is a great fabric for the inside of bags. It's very easy to work with, it's lightweight, and at the end of the project, once you put all these layers together, it doesn't get too bulky. You'll need two 12-inch zippers, and you can use any style of zipper. Just keep in mind the width of zippers can vary, so you may have to make adjustments to the pattern based on the zipper you use. You'll need 1 yard of elastic cord. You can get this in any diameter. This will be used for the front of the pocket. It's a quick little feature. It is optional, so if you don't want to add it, you don't need the elastic. You'll need 1 to 2 yards of 1/2 inch to 1 inch width webbing. This webbing is going to be used for the strap. It really comes down to preference whether you want a thicker strap or a thinner strap. In the hardware going along with the strap, you'll need 2 lobster clasps, 2 D-rings, and 1 strap slider. I'm using a 1 inch width webbing, so all my hardware is going to be 1 inch width. So remember, if you do use a wider webbing, you're going to want to match your hardware. Lastly, you'll need your pattern. This pattern is available at properfitclothing.com. It's super easy to use. All you have to do is download it, print it off, tape it together, and you're ready to go. Before you tape it together, the best thing to do is to cut off the top and one of the side edges. This is going to allow you to overlap the pages for a perfectly aligned pattern. And once you have all your supplies gathered and your pattern printed out, it's time to move into cutting.
And after taping your pattern together, it should look like this. Be sure to check your printer alignment for the best possible results. And from here, we're going to cut on the outside of the black line. And after cutting all your pieces, you should end up with 4 zipper side panels, 2 cut out of your secondary fabric, and 2 cut out of your main fabric. 4 side panels, 2 cut out of your secondary fabric, and 2 cut out of your main fabric. 2 front bottom side panels, 1 cut out of your secondary fabric, and 1 cut out of your main fabric. 2 front pocket panels, 1 cut out of your secondary fabric, and 1 cut out of your main fabric. 2 front main panels, 1 cut out of your secondary fabric, and 1 cut out of your main fabric. 2 back main top panels, 1 cut out of your secondary fabric, and 1 cut out of your main fabric. 4 back main bottom panels and inside pocket panels, 3 cut out of your secondary fabric, and 1 cut out of your main fabric. And lastly, 1 back main panel cut out of your secondary fabric. Moving on to construction, we're going to start by grabbing the back main bottom panel and the inside pocket panel. We're going to start by making the inside pocket panel, so place one of the main fabric and one of the secondary fabrics off to the side. With the remaining 2 secondary layers, place the right sides together, stitch the top edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. After stitching, flip the wrong sides together. Line up the edges for both of the layers, place a few pins so it doesn't move around, and we're going to add a top stitch to that top edge. And if you're looking for a professional finish, I recommend matching your thread color to your fabric color. This will become our inside pocket assembly, and for the moment we can place it off to the side and grab the back main top panels. Separate the secondary fabric from the main fabric, grab your 12-inch zipper, and this zipper just has to be longer than the width of the panels because we're going to be trimming the ends. Using the pattern, locate the zipper edge, and we're going to place the right side of the zipper to the right side of the main fabric, and the right side of the secondary fabric on the opposite side of the zipper. Stitch at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Fold the wrong sides together, lining up the outside edge, place a few pins. Grab the remaining 2 back main bottom panels. You should have 1 secondary and 1 main fabric. Using the pattern, locate the zipper edge at the top of the panel, and we're going to do the same thing as the previous step. Sandwich the zipper in between both of the layers with right sides together and stitch the top edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. After stitching, flip the wrong sides together, line up the sides and bottom edge, place a few pins. With both layers lined up on the top and bottom panel, we're going to add a top stitch to both the zipper seams. After adding the top stitch, double check both sides, make sure all the layers are lined up and looking good, and from here we can slide this panel to the side and grab the back main panel. Flip the back pocket assembly so the secondary fabric is facing up. Place the wrong side of the back main panel over top of the assembly, grab the inside pocket assembly, and we're going to line that up on the bottom edge. What we're going to do is combine all these layers by adding a tack stitch at the bottom, the sides, and the top. Overall, it's going to make it a lot easier in future steps once we combine the front and back assembly. This will also become our new back pocket assembly, and for the moment, it's totally complete, so we can place it off to the side and grab the zipper side panels. Separate the secondary from the main fabric, grab your second 12-inch zipper. Again, the zipper just has to be longer than the width of the panels because we're going to be trimming the ends in future steps. We'll be adding one side at a time, so you can place one secondary and one main fabric panel off to the side, locate the zipper edge, and place the right side of the zipper to the right side of the main fabric and the right side of the secondary fabric to the wrong side of the zipper. Stitch at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. After finishing up the stitch, we're going to flip the wrong side together, place a few pins lining up the outside edge, locate the remaining 2 zipper side panels, and we're going to place them on the opposite side of the zipper using the same technique. And it's very important that you line this set of zipper panels up with the set on the opposite side of the zipper. Flip the wrong sides together, lining up the outside edge, place a few pins, double check both sides, make sure both sets of zipper panels are lined up and looking good, and from here we're going to add a top stitch to both sides of the zipper. Try to make these as neat as possible because they're going to be front and center on your bag. Next, we'll be adding the hardware to the sides of the zipper. I'm going to be using 2 4-inch strips of webbing and 2 D-rings. Feed the webbing through the D-ring, fold the webbing in half, and place it directly on top of the zipper with about 1 inch hanging past the side edge. Repeat this process for the second D-ring and place it on the opposite side of the zipper. Once you have both sides perfectly lined up, we're going to stitch as close as we can to the outside edge, locking the webbing in place. And again, this is just to secure these webbing strips down to make it easier in future steps. Slide the zipper assembly up and grab the side panels. Separate the secondary fabric from the main fabric using the pattern, locate the zipper edge on the side of the panel, and we're going to line this edge up with the zipper assembly. Place the right sides together, sandwiching the zipper assembly in between both of the layers. Done correctly, the sides should line up perfectly. This may vary based on the width zipper you use, and stitch at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. After stitching, locate the zipper and webbing ends and trim them flush with the seam allowance. Fold the side panels out so the wrong sides are together, line up the outside edges and place a few pins. And just like in previous steps, we're going to add a top stitch to both sides of the zipper assembly. This will now become our full side panel assembly, and for the moment it's totally complete, so we can place it off to the side and grab our front pocket panels. Separate the secondary fabric from the main fabric, locate the top edge, place the right sides together, and we're going to stitch just that top edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. After stitching, flip the wrong side together, lining up the outside edges, add a few pins, and just like in previous steps, we're going to add a top stitch to that top edge. Double check both sides, make sure everything is looking good. Lay the pattern on the right side of the fabric and mark out the elastic placement guides. I'm going to be using 1/2 inch webbing for the loops. I just cut my 1 inch webbing in half and melted the sides. To make them more uniform and easy to install, I pre-folded them and added a tack stitch in the center. Place the webbing loops on the placement guide with about a 1/2 inch hanging past the edge, and tack stitch each loop into place by stitching as close as you can to the outside edge. To make it easier, we're going to be adding the elastic cord at the end so it doesn't get in the way as we're sewing the panels together. From here, you can slide this panel to the side and grab the front main panels. And before we add these, we want to make sure the wrong sides are together. Then we're going to place the front pocket assembly on top with right sides facing up. Next, grab the front bottom side panels, separate the layers, locate the top edge, and this is the top edge that we're going to sew to the main panel. Just like in previous steps, we're going to sandwich the front main and pocket assembly in between the bottom side panels with right sides together. Take a quick second to line up all the layers on that bottom edge, and we're going to stitch at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. After stitching, trim the bottom webbing loop flush with the seam allowance. Flip the wrong sides of the bottom side panels together, place a few pins lining up the outside edge, and add a top stitch to the bottom edge. After finishing the top stitch, double check both sides, make sure all those layers are lined up perfectly. If everything is looking good, we can slide this panel to the side and grab the complete side panel assembly. We're going to be sewing these together, and to do it accurate, you want to mark the centers on both the assemblies. Locate the side on the side panel assembly that has the corners, and we're going to be sewing that side to the front panel assembly. Place the right side together, lining up the center mark, pin around the outside edge, and we're going to stitch around the outside edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And take your time with this stitch so the layers line up perfectly. If they don't line up the first try, you can always go back, de-thread, and try it again. If everything is looking good, we're going to trim the rest of the webbing loops flush with the seam allowance. And the next step is optional. We're going to be cleaning up that outside raw edge by adding double fold bias tape. And I'm going to be walking you through a few different techniques that you can use that range from beginner to advanced. So if you're new to sewing and you don't have all the tools, you can still do this step and make your bag super quality. The first method is using a bias tape making kit. In this technique, you make your own double-sided bias tape to the size and fabric you want to use. All you do is cut your strips, feed it through your folder, and press it when it comes out the folder. It's very easy to do, and you get to customize the bias tape to your exact measurements. The second technique is using a double fold bias tape binder. This is the most efficient technique. You cut your strips, feed it through your binder, and sew it directly to your raw edge. And the last technique is using pre-made double fold bias tape. You are limited to colors, but it's very easy to use. You fold it over the edge and stitch it down. And you want to make sure you apply it all the way around the outside edge. And I'm using the bias tape attachment. This is a great way to go if you plan on making a lot of bags. It speeds up the process and gives you a professional finish. Not only does it clean up the raw edge, but it gives it another level of strength by adding an extra stitch. And also when you flip the right sides out, you can see that the corners pop a little bit more because they have that extra bit of structure going around that edge. So all in all, it's just one of those steps that's really going to make your bag a lot more professional. But anyways, moving on, we can slide this assembly to the side and grab the back assembly. And to line them up perfectly, I recommend marking the centers on both of the assemblies. Place the right side together, add pins all the way around that outside edge. And I think the more pins you add, the easier it is to sew. And from here, we're going to stitch all the way around that outside edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And it's very important that all the previous steps were done correctly so that way the circumference of the back assembly matches the circumference of the front assembly. After finishing the stitch, locate the zipper ends and trim them flush with the seam allowance. Before adding the bias tape, I like to quickly flip the right sides out and double check to make sure all the layers got stitched together. If everything is looking good, we can flip the wrong sides back out and add the double fold bias tape to the remaining raw edge. I'll be using the same technique to apply it, so to save time, I'm going to skip past it. And I highly recommend looking into a bias tape attachment if you plan on making a lot of bags because it just really speeds up the process. But anyways, moving on, flip the right sides out, grab your elastic cord. You can cut this to any length. It really comes down to preference and how many times you want to weave it back and forth. I'm threading mine similar to a shoe, so I'm starting at the bottom and going side to side. When you reach the top, you can either sew or melt the elastic cord together, or you can use cord stoppers and cord ends. You can get these in a variety of styles to match your design. If you're using the same thing, you're going to want to slide your cord stopper on first, add the cord ends, and then fold the elastic over or tie it in a knot and pull it back into the cord end. And like I said, there's a bunch of different ways you can do this, so comment down below if you found a fun and cool way that you want to recommend to other people. But anyways, that's going to complete the bag assembly, so we can place it off to the side and grab our 1 to 2 yard strip of webbing. I recommend starting at 2 yards because you can always trim it down after you sew it together. Going along with the webbing, you'll need 2 lobster clasps and 1 strap slider. To assemble the strap, you want to start by adding the strap slider to one side of the webbing, slide it down about 1 foot to 1.5 feet. Add 1 lobster clasp to the same side, pull about 5 inches of slack out of the strap slider, and then feed that webbing end back through the openings on the bottom side of the strap slider. Fold the webbing end over once and pin it down. I like to pull a little bit of the webbing back through the strap slider to open it up to make it easier to sew. Grab the opposite webbing end, feed it through your lobster clasps, roll the end over twice, and add a pin. And from here, we're going to add a tack stitch to both sides. Feel free to add 1 or 2, or even a box to make it extra strong. At this point, you can try it on, adjust it with the strap slider, and see if it fits. And if it's way too big, you can de-thread one of the sides, cut the webbing back, and re-stitch it. And that's why I always recommend going a little bit bigger because it's way easier to trim it back. Clip the complete strap to the D-rings and your bag is complete. Other than the final step, and that's adding custom branding. I use leather strips attached with double-sided rivets, but like always, get creative with it, find a fun way to brand it to make it unique to you. And if you come across a cool technique, definitely comment that down below.
And there you have it, your crossbody bag is complete. Hopefully yours turned out great. And if you're new to sewing, don't give up on your first attempt. It does take a few tries to really perfect these bags, but with time and using the techniques within the tutorial, you will perfect it. Like always, I want to see what you come up with, so tag me on Instagram at Properfit Clothing. And until then, I'm going to keep the videos coming at you, so I'll see you next time.